Del Mar at the Scape Gallery. There's a show here called Pools and Places by artist Donnie Molls. This piece here is a smaller piece. It kind of looks like an older craftsman house. There's a similar theme going on, a house, a sort of forlorn palm tree. It's a lonely space. It's a lonely architectural landscape shot. It's nostalgic. He's used the same device, picking out one element with a color, kind of a bright pastel. It gives it a kind of nostalgia. There's a sense of loneliness here, almost a sense of loss in that if this says something about a California kind of dream, well, it's certainly not here. It's more about a kind of banal view of the California landscape. If we come over here and start looking at these next three images, which are handled a bit differently, we're looking at shapes of pools. Pool is, a really omnipresent architectural feature in California. Something that was very much and still is part of a California fixture in its dream. I remember growing up in the East Coast and friends who were moving to California were going, "We've got a pool, you've got to come out and visit us, it's so great." And I was going, "A pool? Oh my God, what's that?" And well, here they are. And they're just these cement enclosures filled with water. In this case, they look kind of toxic, this sort of like radioactive green in this, interesting composition. And again, because of the hand tinting, there's the sense that this is somewhat nostalgic. Tinted photographs are something that's from the 40s and 50s. This is, prior to color photography. So there's a sense about this show that there's a nostalgia to it, and that nostalgia can be something that is, about loneliness or about loss, and that's the sort of impression I get from this show, particularly because a lot of these setups have these singular shots of individual houses sort of by themselves in the landscape without anything to accompany them. This is an interesting piece. I like the color blue. It's a very bright cyan. The landscape seems to go off into nothingness. It may be Los Angeles. It reminds me more of a place like Bakersfield, where beyond the household there just goes off into a desert that, where there's absolutely nothing out there. This is curious. Here, there's no water in the pool. It's a pretty derelict patio. It's curious red slash of a wall and with a kind of pink sky that you might associate with something that's almost foreboding, like smoke or fire in the background, or not the approaching dawn, something a little more ominous. And even the trees look a little bit sickly. And it's really the coloring that he's used juxtaposed with this, kind of, burned out pool. It looks a bit kind of more like a wasteland shot. This is a really incredible piece, I think. This is goes somewhere else. This has nothing to do with, for me, with isolation or wasteland. It's just a really terrific painting. I love the way he's let the emulsions really run. The composition, I think, is really beautiful. What makes this not nostalgic is that the coloration of the pool is quite normal, and it takes it out of that sort of nostalgic vein. And this is quite beautiful. The way he's handled the landscape and the coloration of the trees and the but the really beautiful handling of the sky. This is a really extraordinary piece, and it's different than these others, which seem, as I was saying, kind of hand-tinted, feel like they're of another era. This feels much more of the present, and I feel is much more successful. If we come over here, there's another piece that is, again, feels more hand-tinted. What's a little different about it is the way you have these striations or what appear to be brush marks or scrapings moving down the surface, kind of breaks it up. It's, it makes it feel a little more painterly, kind of a bit different. So you're more aware of the artist's hand or brush strokes in it, breaking up the surface. And it kind of interrupts the sense of the tint or nostalgia, and it makes it something else. It makes it more of a formal exercise in painting and art making, and less about the emotional tenor that the other ones had that seemed more about loss, disruption, isolation. And this seems more about an architectural study with this kind of scraggly tree behind it, but it's kind of keys more on, I think, the shapes and how they operate in space. There are two other pieces here that appear to be new efforts by the artist. They are more abstracted. There are shots of the surface of water. Here's a small one. You can see the ripples shimmering of water, the surface of water. So it has the effect of being almost like a pattern painting, or a pattern. In this case, it really reads more as a photograph that's been colorized or glazed with a color. It's probably more effective to be seen on a larger scale. And it has a similarity to other non-objective works that we've seen. One artist who comes to mind, without the color of course, who works with water is Bija Kelmans, but just in terms of photo-based mixed media works, I think this is a new area that he's venturing into. And there is precedent for this kind of work with other artists who work with textures, pattern painting, and we'll just have to see where he goes with it. It is, in my mind, makes for something that is, kind of mysterious as it, the pattern sort of disappears towards the top and moves into a different kind of ether or atmosphere. That's very effective. Now we're going to go around the corner and look at some pieces from 2014 that I think are quite interesting. The reason for showing these pieces is because I think they give you an idea of where he has been leading up to this show. These are also urban landscapes, houses in Los Angeles, and they still have that same stark quality. In this case, houses that are sort of very alone in a kind of street scene. It's not glamorous, the color, it's really kind of very bleached out. But there's something about the starkness of this that's really quite austere and beautiful. They don't feel tinted. They feel quite contemporary. And that's different from the quality that I'm seeing in this show. They don't feel nostalgic. They feel more like Los Angeles does on a very hot afternoon, where it's that kind of white heat and the color leaves the sky. I think they're quite beautiful, and they're very strong with the composition, everything below the horizon line, and these skies with just a hint of color above them. Now we're going to go look at the signature piece of the show, which I think is a very strong one. This is California as we know it and often see it. A lot of Los Angeles looks like this. It's very earthy and it's very true. It is not the fantasy Los Angeles, California dream at all. And so, as I talked about in some of the others that were kind of hand-tinted, there's a sense of something not being fulfilled, the California dream not being fulfilled. But on the other hand, it's just a very clear-eyed, truthful, authentic view of a California we all know very well. One that's not dressed up, one that's not fancy, one that a lot of us inhabit. And I think the artist has captured this extremely well. And I think this has been a terrific show, and let's see what he does. He's off to a great start.
Hey Leigh, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah. So we're in the studio of Leigh Bongiorno, and we came today to look at some of her paintings and also to talk about your technique and you know, but also the content of what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing with your work. I've seen your work. Terrence Sanders sent me some images, and you've been very focused, at least what I've seen, on portraits of people in different settings, but people who seem to be sort of outside in what I would describe as, and confirm this or tell me if you feel differently, people who are kind of outside the mainstream, maybe disenfranchised or marginalized. Would you say that? Or?
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. Which should we start with?
Well, why is that? Why is that your focus right now?
Like, it's more interesting to walk down the street where there's, you know, the paint's chipping off a building than like brand new buildings. It's kind of boring. And then your typical person you see every day is kind of boring to me. I think this is more interesting. I grew up in Cleveland, so it's like I had a lot of black friends. My best friend's a lesbian. So, you know, I see things that have happened to them, and so I kind of want to like speak out on their behalf too. But, you know, I kind of want to like this guy was homeless. I kind of wanted to humanize him in a way.
Is this someone you've met?
His name is Cece, and I found out from somebody else that was homeless down there. He was on Broadway in downtown LA, and I just thought he had a really good, interesting face. And ideally, I would like to, you know, give some money back to him once I sell the paintings. Although it's hard to find them, but.
Well, they move around. I've worked with the homeless, and it's hard to track them sometimes. To capture this likeness, did you photograph him as a source image, or how do you go about this?
So I photographed, I'm walking down the street and I see them, and I just ask them if I can take their picture. Sometimes I just take their picture if they don't notice. But I take their picture, and then I take a ton of photos, and then I come home and kind of look through them all, and sometimes I Photoshop different pictures together to get the right composition for me. But
And then do you work directly from the photo or just use it as a reference?
well, I use it as my reference sometimes, but a lot of times they're photo composites, so I put them up on my computer screen. I used to print them out, but I think I get better results just looking from the computer screen, because the prints you get kind of things that don't show up well.
Right.
And I can zoom in on certain areas. And
Tell me about this photo here. This is a very strong piece of the
this
school.
girl, when she wasn't homeless, I actually hired her as a model down when we lived in Miami Beach. And I liked that she had like this alternative look with the like mohawk hair. And I told her I wanted her to pose kind of like this powerful. There's a lot of, the Black Lives Matter thing going on.
Well, there's another drawing over here that looks pretty detailed, and I think you're working on a canvas in the other room. We'll go look at that.
This is them
This is a couple.
in downtown LA, near Broadway
Okay.
as well.
You didn't really go to school for this. You sort of figured this out on your own.
Not this underpainting. When I was in high school, I understudied an artist who was supposed to teach me oil painting. I had to get out of that for personal reasons with him. But he actually never got to the oil painting part of the class. So I was pretty much self-taught with the oil painting.
Right.
And they never taught us anything about underpaintings in school. And that guy's technique, he kind of just mixed the color and put it wherever he saw it. And I tried that before. I did that with other paintings, but I started researching artists that I like and trying to find studio photos so I could see their paintings in progress
Right.
and see how they did it. And so I tried this on a little smaller sample studies, and then
So I love this underpainting phase, because this would say if you were working in a studio in the 15th century, say whether it was Tintoretto or Titian, you typically would start with a neutral ground, generally sienna. You would do a tracing, very much like that, and pounce the drawing onto the canvas. They'd often put pinpricks all along the outlines, and then with a charcoal bag, they would pounce over the tracing, leaving charcoal drawing underneath, and then go over it with a light oil wash and put in the lines instead of pencil or something like that. But then they'd start building it up in terms of darks and lights, and they'd begin painting in layers. And exactly as you're doing, they'd start rendering it literally in oil, and then later start glazing in the color or putting in the body color. So it's really fascinating seeing you develop this on your own, and I'm quite impressed that you've been able to do this. It's really
I always kind of watered down my paints when I would, not with oil, I guess. So I'm always paint really lightly. So I've always kind of built up stuff in layers. Yeah, I really like this one. It's probably one of my favorites so far. But I feel like I'm still teaching myself, because like all those paintings out there were done with a different technique, pretty much.
So Leigh, some of these photos up here, for instance, this must be the couple, this photo here that you're doing a portrait of, but some of these other photos are these.
This guy, I thought he was interesting. I liked his hair. He was just kind of standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I asked him if I could take his photo, he started doing all these weird poses. But I just went with it, but I really liked my first photo of him. Like this girl, I liked her hair. She was very colorful. I think she was like a rapper. I'm trying to be a rapper out here. This lady was like smashing all these plastic bottles, so we caught her and took her photo. This guy was another artist, and I came across him on Hollywood Boulevard. there's these cops guys just standing there. I thought they were interesting.
Did they know you were taking their picture?
Yeah, but they were standing like that before I came.
Yeah. And so this is how you arrive at some of your source
Yeah, I take all
material.
kinds of photos.
You're just out there with your camera and...
This was near Skid Row, and these people just got off the bus, and I look back at the photos. This guy was not happy that we took his photo. It doesn't look like it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I think he wanted to fight us. But then, you know, as I walk down the street, sometimes I like pass an alleyway that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that. This guy, he was on Broad Street as well. He was interesting. I talked to him, asked him how he lost his leg. And so he's actually Sioux Native American from like North Dakota. So he's really passionate about, you know, the oil line they want to put up there.
Right.
He wants to go protest that. But he lost his leg on a train. Because that's how they would ride the trains up there. This guy was in Skid Row. Took his picture.
And then these larger black and white photos, these are older drawings.
Yeah.
Right.
Surrealistic older drawings.
Well, this is interesting to see how your source material then, like this, translates into, you know, a real bona fide work of art, you know, as a full-blown paint, first drawing and then painting. I think we've covered everything, and I hope I see you again.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for this visit.
Yeah,
And I think your work is really terrific.
Thank you.
So, anyway, it's been my
Nice
pleasure.
meeting you.
Okay, thanks, Leigh.
Thank you.